Frostbite Jack. In the quiet town of Frost Valley, winters were a time of beauty and camaraderie. Snow blanketed the landscape, and families gathered around roaring fires. Each December, the children would gather in the town square to build a snowman. This wasn't just any snowman. He was their beloved tradition, Frostbite Jack. Crafted with coal eyes, a carrot nose, a scarf knitted by the town's oldest resident, and a magical hat passed down through generations, Frostbite Jack was the heart of Frost Valley's winter joy. But Frostbite Jack wasn't just a lifeless creation. Thanks to the magic of the hat, he would come alive each year, bringing joy to the children and lighting up the winter nights with laughter and stories. Jack loved his role as the town's cheerful guardian. He sang songs, built forts, and even helped with the annual sled races. But every spring, as the days grew longer and warmer, Jack would begin to melt. His coal eyes would grow dim, his carrot nose would sag, and his voice would fade until he was nothing more than a puddle. Year after year, the children promised they would bring him back. But Frostbite Jack grew weary of dying. By the winter of his 20th resurrection, a darkness began to creep into his cheerful demeanor. It started small, sharp words when his scarf wasn't tied just right, a temper flare when his hat was knocked askew. The townsfolk brushed it off as a quirk, but Jack knew the truth. Each melting left him feeling more hollow, more bitter. And then one year he refused to die. The winter of 1997 was the coldest Frost Valley had seen in decades. The snow piled high, the lakes froze solid, and Frostbite Jack was more animated than ever. But something was different. His coal eyes seemed darker, glinting with something sharp and malevolent. His movements were jerky, less like the fluid frolics of years past. That year, winter lingered unnaturally long. The trees refused to bud, and the snow refused to melt. The townsfolk whispered of an unnatural chill that hung in the air, but no one dared confront Jack about it. One night, a group of teenagers decided to test the rumors. They ventured into the town square where Jack stood motionless under the flickering light of the lamppost. The snow around him was eerily smooth, untouched by wind or animals. "Come on, Jack," one boy teased, poking the snowman's body with a stick. "You're not scary." In a blur, Jack's stick arm lashed out, wrapping around the boy's wrist. His coal eyes glowed red and his jagged smile stretched wider. "Not scary?" he rasped, his voice no longer cheerful, but deep and gravelly. "Let me show you scary." The boy's scream echoed through the square as Jack dragged him into the darkness. The others fled, but no one saw the boy again. The next morning, the townsfolk found a grisly scene in the square. The boy's stick lay snapped in two, and his scarf was frozen into the snow like a warning. Frostbite Jack stood taller, his body glistening with fresh layers of ice. From that day on, Frost Valley was plunged into a nightmare. Anyone who ventured too close to Jack disappeared. Strange whispers echoed through the streets at night, carried on the biting wind. Shadows moved unnaturally under the glow of streetlights. One by one, the townsfolk began to leave, but not everyone could escape. Those who stayed behind barricaded themselves in their homes, their windows frosted over with ice that wouldn't melt, no matter how warm the fire inside. Jack had grown stronger. Among those who remained were siblings Clara and Ben, teenagers who had always adored Jack. They refused to believe the stories. To them, Jack was a victim of misunderstanding, not the monster the town claimed. "We have to talk to him," Clara insisted one snowy evening as they stood at their frost-covered window. "Are you insane?" Ben whispered harshly. "He's dangerous now." But Clara was stubborn. That night, as Ben slept, she crept out into the square. The air was unnaturally cold, and her breath crystallized before her. "Jack?" she called softly. The snowman's head swiveled slowly toward her, his red eyes glowing in the darkness. "Clara," he rasped. "You stayed." She shivered but stood her ground. "Jack, what's happening? Why are you doing this?" For a moment, the snowman was silent. Then he began to move toward her, his icy body crackling with each step. "Do you know what it's like to die every year?" he hissed. "To feel yourself dissolve into nothingness while the world moves on without you?" Clara took a step back. "But we bring you back." "It's not enough!" Jack roared, his voice shaking the snow-covered rooftops. "I want to exist, to live, and now, I've found a way." Before Clara could react, Jack raised an arm, and the snow beneath her feet surged upward, wrapping around her legs. She screamed as icy tendrils pulled her closer to him. "Clara," Ben's voice rang out as he burst into the square, wielding a makeshift torch. The flames cast flickering shadows on Jack's frozen form. The snowman recoiled, hissing as the fire came near. "You can't stop me," he snarled. "Not anymore." Ben managed to free Clara, and they fled back to their home. But as they sat huddled by the fire, Clara noticed something strange. The frost on their windows seemed to form words. "Help me," it read. "It's a trick," Ben muttered, but Clara wasn't so sure. The next day, they found an old journal in the attic of their house, left behind by their great-grandfather, who had been one of the first to build Frostbite Jack. The pages told a chilling story. The magical hat that brought Jack to life had been cursed. It was crafted by a desperate sorcerer who sought to trap his soul in something eternal. The hat gave life, but it also consumed it, feeding on Jack's essence year after year. The more he melted, the more corrupted he became. "There has to be a way to end this," Clara whispered, flipping through the pages. At last they found it. To destroy the hat would free Jack and end his torment, but it wouldn't be easy. The hat was now a part of him, bound to his icy core. That night, Clara and Ben armed themselves with torches, salt, and a plan. They ventured into the square where Jack awaited them, his monstrous form towering over the lamppost. "You've come back," he growled, his voice echoing unnaturally. "Jack, we know the truth," Clara said, holding up the journal. "You don't have to suffer anymore." Jack hesitated, his glowing eyes dimming slightly. "Lies," he hissed. "You just want to destroy me." "No, we want to free you." For a moment, Jack seemed to falter, but then the wind howled, and his coal eyes burned brighter. "I won't go back to nothingness!" he roared, lunging toward them. Ben threw salt at Jack's feet, and the snowman shrieked as the ice hissed and melted. Clara darted forward, aiming for the hat atop his head. Jack roared, sending a blizzard of snow swirling around them. Clara fought against the icy wind, her fingers brushing the brim of the hat. With one final surge of strength, she ripped it free. The wind stopped. Jack froze in place, his monstrous form crumbling as the hat disintegrated in Clara's hands. For a moment, his face softened, and his coal eyes looked almost grateful. "Thank you," he whispered before collapsing into a heap of snow. Spring came early that year, and the snow melted away without resistance. Frost Valley slowly returned to normal, though the townsfolk never spoke of Frostbite Jack again. But Clara and Ben couldn't shake the feeling that something lingered. On the first snowfall of the following winter, Clara found a single coal eye on her windowsill, and the frost spelled out two chilling words. "I'm back."